The Seattle Police Department has reassigned one of their police officers because it turns out that he wrote about 80% of all marijuana citations in the past year. Now, the police officer in question is Randy Jokela. I don't know exactly where he's going to work, but he is no longer going to pass out these marijuana citations. And for those of you who are saying, wait a minute, isn't marijuana legal in Washington? Yes, it is. However, you are not supposed to smoke marijuana in public. That's one of the regulations that came along with the law. Now, according to reports, the Seattle Police Department staff discovered that 66 out of the 83, or approximately 80% of marijuana tickets were issued by this one officer. And also, the officer refers to Washington's voter-enacted changes to marijuana laws as silly. So he obviously wanted to go after people who were smoking, but he also wanted to attack a very specific demographic. In fact, they were disproportionately issued to black people, African Americans. So African Americans are about 8% of the city's population. They received 1/3 of all the citations.
You know, I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the minute you said it, I was, of course he did. So this guy's on some sort of kick, right? And
look at him. He looks like one of those guys, right?
Right, yeah. So he's so brazen that in one of the reports he wrote, I pulled these guys over, somebody had a marijuana, so I flipped a coin to see which one I was going to charge.
Oh.
Yeah, that's going to stand up in court.
He wrote that in the note section of the citation. Like, he's so brazen about everything.
Yeah, but apparently he's got a buddy at the city attorney's office. So there's city attorney Peter Holmes, but he constantly refers to him in his notes as Petey Holmes.
You know why, though?
They're BFFs.
No, they're not. So the city attorney is very openly in favor of legalizing marijuana. In fact, when on the first day of legalization, where you can go to a dispensary and buy it for recreational purposes, he was one of the first people to buy it, and he actually,
that's him.
yes, and
Oh,
he
that's
actually,
Petey Holmes.
yeah, so he actually went to work with pot, and he got in trouble for it. Right? We covered that story.
So this guy saying, "Ha ha, Petey Holmes.
Petey Holmes.
I'm going to send you more of these guys that I busted."
Yes.
Right. And funny enough, even though they're only 8% of the population, and by the way, whites and blacks smoke pot at the same rate. There's been many studies on that. This officer just happened to find a bunch of black people smoking pot instead of white people. What? Golly gee, what a twist of luck that was.
Well, I also like that he hasn't been disciplined. He hasn't been fired. He's been reassigned.
Yes.
Isn't that what they do?
He's been reassigned. Hey, we got this guy, probably a racist. Let's give him another job, I guess, inside the police department.
Let's promote him.
Yeah, let's give him another desk job.
I'm so surprised that this is coming from a big city like Seattle. You think, like, there's this place in Washington, I guarantee you've never heard of it, but this cop went rogue and he's going crazy. But this is like, I mean, you're in a fishbowl. You're in Seattle. How did he get away with this for this long?
In a fairly liberal place.
Yeah.
The police force has had lots of problems like this in Seattle. For whatever reason, it's a very northwest, with very liberal, progressive, but their police force has lots of these kind of problems, and also with Hispanics, and I've covered on my show. So for whatever reason,
they're not into
the
it.
policing is not really connected with the people of the city, which, you know, that's been my big problem with a lot of the police departments around the country, is that they're not really part of the community. They're an occupying force, you know, when in Los Angeles, when the cops all live up by Magic Mountain and they drive 50 miles into South Central, they go police it, they're not part of that community.
Right.
They're an occupying force, and they see citizens as the enemy and not someone to be served. And that's a big problem with the culture of policing.
There's no way they're going to fire this guy, because they're going to say, look, I mean, they weren't supposed to be smoking in public. He gave them tickets for that. And yeah, it was disproportionate in terms of the other cops. But they're not going to get into the issue that it was disproportionate against African Americans, because then if you get into that, then you're going to have to look at the whole police department and see how they conduct affairs. So they're just going to, you know, sweep this under the rug, reassign them, and be done with their lives.
Right. The people of Seattle should be enraged about this. Like, aside from the racism angle of it, I mean, think about
weed or not.
Whether you smoke weed or not, because think about it, it's your money that's paying this guy, right? So your resources are getting wasted on this guy who would rather focus on people who are smoking marijuana in public as opposed to actual crime that could hurt you. So, I mean, it's just such a waste of money. This guy is a terrible person who's obviously targeting a very specific group of people. He should be fired. He's not going to be fired. And you're right, it's too complicated. They're not going to want to get into the nitty-gritty of how many police officers are doing the same thing.
Right, because if they try to fire this guy, he'll demand a court case. When he goes to court, they'll get statistics of the rest of the Seattle Seattle Police Department and how well they've arrested blacks as compared to whites. And the holy cow, turns out we're still being racist. Everyone is, not just this guy. That's what would probably happen.
And I assume, because we hear it here all the time on the news, they're going to say the most condescending, horrible thing that they can. It's an ongoing investigation. We're looking into it, which means shut up. We're taking care of it, and let's move on with our lives.
It's an internal investigation,
right? Yeah,
not an independent one.
No, of course.
Yeah.